founders mostly come from engineering, product-based technology background, or they are not aware how to raise funds. Number one, it's very important for a founder to be aware about who he is, what his strengths are, and to pitch the startup according to his strengths. The way you convey your story, okay, and if your pitch deck can convey that story, none of them had a business background or a finance background or something like that.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the RoboSapien podcast. We are your co-hosts, Abhar and Abhas. So, I really hope you will enjoy today's episode because we have talked about everything you need to consider before going for funding. Funding is a process where everybody stumbles upon at one time or another, and we always, get scared. But today we have considered all those things, talked about those things with Devansh, and I really hope you like it.
So hi Devansh, welcome to RoboSapien podcast. And
Hi.
hi. So would you please like to introduce yourselves to our listeners?
Oh, yes, 100%. So first of all, thank you, Abhar and Abbas, for calling me here on this wonderful podcast. I'd love to be a part of this and, to spend some time with you guys on this podcast. So thanks a lot for calling me here. It means a lot. And to quickly introduce myself, I'll not say a lot of things, but just to quickly introduce myself, I'm a chartered accountant by qualification and run my investment banking firm, which is into startup advisory and startup fundraising. So we basically specialize in helping early stage startups to raise funds from our network of investors and provide them a lot of value added services like creation of business plans, pitch decks, valuation reports, ESOP policy, ESOP documentation, those kind of basically services, and then finally connect them with like-minded investors and try to close a deal for them. So that is what we do in its entirety. That's what we do basically at LFS, Lakhani Financial Services.
What you're doing is actually very needed for the earlier startups, because in early stage, people do not know where to go, how to start. So what you're doing is more like a guidance, like a teacher. Like we all need a guru in our life, and you are playing a part of that guru. That is very important for any early stage startup. So on that note, I would really be interested in knowing, like, how did your journey started, thinking that, okay, you can help out startups and guiding them throughout the process. Like, what was the beginning idea?
So it wasn't planned, first of all, for, it sometimes feels that it was planned in hindsight, but it was not planned. I was actually, once I left my job and then I started LFS in 2018 January. It was almost, it's like 5 years now, I guess. 2023 ho jayega, so it will be 5 years. And 5 years back when I started LFS, it was predominantly, we were doing more of stock market stuff, more of research out there, more of handling people's portfolios, stock broking, mutual fund advisory, etc. And that is what I always, I wanted to do till that time. For 2 years I did that. We raised funds on the stock exchange, investment banking kind of thing, corporate finance, where I have done an IPO. We did right issue on the SME stock exchange. So those were again the fundraising parts which we were doing at that point in time, but that was for the listed companies and SME companies basically. But then startups just happened by chance, I would say, because when I think the timing just set in very right, and probably I was at the right place at the right time. When I look at in hindsight, because when I think at the maybe in mid 2019 or something, when we were working on few SME IPOs, they were not going through. The market was very dull at that point in time, especially the SME primary market. It was very dull and very illiquid, and we were not being able to raise funds that time. So it was almost on the dip. Okay, it was at the fag end of the journey of the SME IPO, etc. But because I think before that 3 years there had been a lot of push towards the SME IPO stuff, and a lot of capital was raised. All those things had happened. So I entered very late in that industry. And in mid 2019 onwards, I started getting a few deals. I started getting a few referrals from friends and friends ka friends, basically. If you're doing IPOs on the stock exchange or something, you're raising funds there. Why don't you help this early stage startup? They're looking to raise funds. So Tub startups was a very fairly new word in mid 2019. It started picking up in mid 2020 or late 2020 once COVID hit,
During the
and
COVID, right?
yeah,
COVID at time,
so it was
everybody was starting startups.
yeah, because people left their jobs, so tabhi there was nothing. So it was more startup, So mid 2020 or late 2020, third quarter of 2020, I think startups started getting pick up.
Yeah.
Okay, but I started entering it into quarter three of 2019 calendar year, like the whole calendar year, Jan to December, and I started getting referrals and started understanding, speaking to certain investors, a couple of friends from VC industry, etc. I had, because I'm come from a predominant finance field only, so had friends, a few mentors or someone. I started understanding what is happening in the startup ecosystem, and the referrals or the deal flows that I was receiving. That time I was just one man show. I was just alone. So I started receiving, and I understood that founders mostly come from engineering, product based technology background, like you guys coders and stuff like that, engineers, etc. Most of the techs which I received, these founders were from that background. None of them had a business background or a
Background.
finance background or something like that, where they were previous entrepreneurs or something, or something on those lines. So that is where, and what I saw is that they don't have the right way, or they are not aware how to raise funds, number one. They're not aware how to approach the investors in the right manner. They're not aware how to do the documentation for the investors in the right manner. So that's where I started developing my skill sets, upskilled myself from what I knew in the SME industry. I was at that SME industry level, how I was functioning, upskilled myself to the startup ecosystem level, what I need to know to advise these startups, okay, to raise funds, how to prepare these business plans, how to prepare the pitch decks. I started learning all those stuffs, created my own module, what can I do for them, etc. And then started providing those services. Slowly, steadily, it started building. And COVID had been more so like a blessing in disguise for us, because there was a flush of startups that wanted to raise funds and get advice, etc. So yeah, now we are a team of 12 people, and from and working with startups day in day out. So that is how the journey was actually.
So yeah, Devansh, as I was like listening to you, and I noticed that you help startup with everything that they need to get a funding, right? So you said
Hmm.
like you help them with like pitch decks and everything. So would you like to elaborate what pitch deck means? And actually, yeah, first question is that what pitch deck means and those
so
terms that
uh,
you talked of.
So very simple in layman terms, pitch deck is a document which needs to be sent to the investors, and it's a very beautiful, crisp, and a precise representation about what your company does, about what is the vision that the company holds, and what is the current kind of success stories that the company has, and how much funds they want to raise from the investors, and what they're going to do with the funds, right? So it is a complete representation of the business model about the startup, and to be explained to the investor in a language in which he can understand. So it has to be again, as I said, those three important words: beautiful, crisp, and precise. So without these three words, there is no pitch deck. So it has to have these three ingredients in order to make it a pitch deck, and it covers the entire business model of the founder, the vision of the founder, how he wants to grow it ahead, and what is the fundraising requirement also that he's looking to raise.
So like second part of that question is, what are the key factors that a CEO or the person has to be aware about while presenting themselves in front of the investors?
I think, see, it's very important for a founder to be aware about who he is, what his strengths are, and to pitch the startup according to his strengths. Okay, I think sometimes what happens is that founders also get in FOMO, fear of missing out, and sometimes they just see that the competitors have raised, so people start comparing it to them.
Hmm.
Sometimes happens that, okay, I had attended a pitch event and this guy pitched in a very right manner, so I lose my identity and try to copy him. Okay, so I think at a very grassroots or a basic level, it should be that the founders should be themselves. Many times क्या होता है कि founders, so one of this episode on which I'd really loved, there was an episode on the Shantanu Deshpande only, the Bombay Shaving Company. He has a YouTube channel called The Barber Shop or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
Yeah, so there was one episode, two founders who had come from some tier 2, tier 3 towns. Okay, and they were doing some startup. I forgot the business model actually. I had seen it like 4 5 weeks back, but I remember why I remember this because of the way he conducted his pitch. Okay, and he was completely in Hindi, English. He was cracking the most stupid jokes, making fun of himself.
yeah. I
Taking it
remember
very
that
light.
episode. I remember that episode. They were about
What?
the biking jackets
Oh
and stuff,
yes,
right?
yes, 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 yes. The
Yeah, yeah,
biking jackets one. The
yeah,
biking jacket one.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And that guy was so entertaining and so light-hearted person, like completely light. ऐसा उसको लगता ही नहीं है कि वो entrepreneur था,
Yeah.
and that is what just left me, like I saw that whole episode. It was for 1 hour plus, but it put me glued because of that guy's way of pitching. It was nothing. He was not trying to manipulate. He was not trying to be someone else. He was himself. He was cracking the worst jokes, and he was degrading even himself. Like
Yeah.
it was like a proper. So he was doing anything that it came naturally to him. So
Hmm.
I think in front of investors, you should be natural and be yourself. That is what I think sometimes the founders lose their steam because they try to be someone else. Hindi mein pasand hai, Hindi mein crack stupid jokes, have good sense of humor. Joby, what is your actual personality with your
Hmm.
friends? If you behave like that, even those guys are humans. They'll understand the emotion plus the rationale behind your business model, basically.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah.
Totally agreed, man. And I also noticed one more thing that he not only presented that how his company can succeed, but he also presented how his company cannot fail. And that was
Yeah.
like one factor that even Shantanu talked about in the podcast. That after listening that, I was like, okay, that is the difference between an amateur pitcher and a professional pitcher. That was one thing
Yeah.
I noticed.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah. Yeah.
we have discussed about Bombay Shaving Company, the barber shop a lot on this podcast very recently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we
Okay.
listened to
Wow.
him, and you know,
So this
just to
is
get
this is a good coincidence. We are doing
yeah,
it again all of a sudden. All right.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
yeah, nice. So,
Hmm.
okay, so one thing, what do you think are the expectation of the investor? Like, I'm like, let's say I'm pitching, right, and you are the investor. So, what will be your insight? Like, what do you expect from the basic expectation of a investor for a startup founder who is pitching his idea? What do you think those things are like? You have helped a lot of companies, so I believe you must have some idea like what companies actually succeed in that part and what do not. So what goes on in the investor's mind?
So it's very difficult to gauge that. I don't think anyone can gauge because every investor is different. Look, for some investor, X point will work. For some investor, that X point would be a turn off. For some investor, that Y point would work. For the Y would be a turn off. Okay, so it's very difficult. I believe, depending on the way you convey your story. Okay, and if your pitch deck can convey that story, and later on when you are pitching, if there is a level of practicality, plus certain level of emotion behind why you are doing this, if that is conveyed in a very good manner, then even investors can connect. They seem to be little tough nuts or something, but for them also that why is very important. So I feel that if that why is conveyed in the right manner, because see, most nahi, I would say many of the startups are just started because my neighbor is doing the same thing. My neighbor started a startup. Okay. कोई एकदम out of the box unique या कोई genuinely to solve a purpose, yeah, having that genuine why, people are not starting up. People are starting up thinking it is a good journey, freedom milega, independence hai, 9 to 5 say, I can make
Right.
some quick money, I can get some valuation, I can get an exit in like 4 5 years. So 4 5 years I'll work hard, I'll do mehnat, and then sell the company. Many of them, we come across those people also so many times. On a day-to-day basis, out of 4 calls, 1 to 2 call has this kind of an aspect. 2 calls to hote hi hai. Okay. So I think all these investors connect to the why. If they have also gone through that same journey or had that same why in their earlier days, they can also connect with it. So I think it's important. See, at the hardcore facts, of course, you need to have good technology. If you have good AI or ML, all these kind of things inbuilt, and there is a good product in place which can scale, which can sell, you are having certain traction, you're having certain users, revenue at this point in time. Well, business model is one thing. Those are the hard facts and the hard numbers. But I feel sometimes it's important with investors to have that softer angle, that soft part also. Okay. Which is that why? Which is the genuine reason why have you done this? Okay. And if that investor can connect with your why, I think it creates a much more longer relationship between the investor and the founder also. ओके तो इट हैज टू बी समवेयर कि भाई ये क्यों स्टार्ट किया है. पैसे आज नहीं तो कल बन जाएंगे. वैल्यूएशन के लिए if that person has just started to sell the company, it will be seen from his way of talking only. You can understand, okay, okay, this guy just is talking abrupt and he just looking to sell the company within 5 years. Okay, so that everyone can smell blood. Okay, these guys are all whales and sharks and everyone, wolves, in fact, all these investors. So they can smell blood. It's not that they cannot smell blood, so there has to be a mix of ambitiousness, having a proper, business model, good technology, scalable product, and a strong purpose or a why. I think that why or purpose factor, most of the founders forget about that.
Right. Yeah, nice. That's really nice insight. And
Yeah.
on that point, you said like we as a founder have to like tell what we have to pitch ourselves, and we have to sell ourselves to the investors, right? So are there except introducing ourselves and pitching ourselves, are there any common questions that investors ask about our company?
Common questions are basically about the business model. How does the business run? Okay, like who are your competitors? About the market size. What's your current traction and revenue? So these are basic common questions. Yeah, I mean, and they like to go in little bit detail also about these kind of questions. So more or less these kind of questions. Yeah.
Okay, like surrounding the
surrounding the
financial aspects
business.
of the.
Not only financial aspects, but in general the business, the competition, market size, etc. also, no?
Yeah, if you see a lot of the even the Shark Tank episode, they usually ask that, do you know about the competition? Like, what are you aware about the competition? And that, I believe, is plays a very key role while pitching, right?
Yes, it does. It does. It does. You must know about your competition. Sometimes I feel that investors like to go very much in depth also. But I think, yeah, you must be aware about your competition, who it is, and you must know, okay, what kind of sales or business that they are doing. I think in detail it is fine if you don't know, but you must know at least a good brief overview about what these guys are doing, how they are performing, etc. Maybe not in-depth analysis is that much not very important, because everyone has their own journey, but you must definitely know quite a bit about your competition.
Yeah. Agreed, man. Agreed. And like that is also required. And I totally understand your, what you said, like why is very important. You need to present your why. Like
Hmm.
I was reading a book very recently. I've talked about it in previous episodes as well. It's The Start with Why by Simon Sinek. He
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
explained the reason of why that why factor of your company, the why factor of your mission and vision is very important, because when you present your why in a certain way that everybody understand why you are doing that, it becomes a part of you, it becomes a part of the company.
It becomes a part, yes.
Yeah, so
And
whenever a person
that
is
purpose
buying.
becomes, yeah, that purpose becomes bigger than yourself. It becomes bigger than the other members. It becomes bigger than anything else.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
agreed, man, totally agreed. But one thing that always bothers me, and on personal level, is that most of the startups, when they start starting their company as a very starting level, they think that okay, we just go, we'll uh, start looking for investment absolutely in the beginning, like okay, I'm starting my startup tomorrow, next week I'll start looking for investment. But mostly it doesn't work like that, right? You
Mhm.
have to go through a lot of process, a lot of, you have to at least create a prototype, sell it, or present it to people.
A hundred
So
percent.
I
Yeah.
want, I would like to know at what stage you believe a startup should actually start looking for fundraising and investment on all those things, and what are the factors a startup should consider before starting thinking about fundraising.
So the time at which a startup should go for fundraising should not be the idea stage, the prototype development stage, etc. I think initial stage where he needs to develop a certain MVP and to get certain amount of traction and a decent product market fit. I think till then he needs to bootstrap it or maximum raise from his family and friends. Okay. So that is the place where he needs to be. Now, product market fit has a very different definition for different people. For some people, it can be, say, for example, getting 5 lakh users on the app, 5 lakh downloads. For some people, it could be a monthly revenue of, say, 7 to 8 lakhs. For some people, it could be 2 to 3 lakhs. For some people, it could be 10, 15 lakhs, right? So different people have different definition. But I think there has to be something on the table that needs to be done before the investor enters by the founder himself and by the founding team, right? So that is when once you feel, see, that's when you feel confident to go to an investor. अभी idea क्या ही जाके बेचोगे, basically, that is very rare that happens. I mean, it happens. I'm not saying it does not happen, but I think there could be a few other factors that would be behind that selling of idea to the investor. Maybe he's an ex-IIT, IIM alumni. Maybe he's a founder of a previous startup which had raised some good amount of funds, and he has given exit to his investors. So the same investors are backing him again. Uh, you know, so on and so forth. There could be some other factors more than just the product or the idea. Okay. I think those kind of things. For example, Kunal Shah free charge once he gave an exit. So I think at an idea stage he could raise for cred.
Right.
Okay, so those kind of things can just happen once you have been successful and you've shown your success to the investor. So they'll back you irrespective of the idea kaisa bhi ho. Then of course it's another thing for you to create the business model out of it and to make it as successful as Cred, that which he has done it, not with which everyone can do it, right? So idea पे fund मिलना बहुत difficult है, but yes, I feel the correct stage should be once you have certain product market fit basically. So that is first. And what was the second question, Abbas?
Okay, so what factors a investor, startup founder should consider before going for investment? Like that was the whole thing.
Yeah, so he should focus on this traction. He should have a tech enabled or a tech driven product in place where which is, it's fine if it's not a full blown product. It's fine if he's not spent crores of rupees on it, but there has to be an MVP, which is a working MVP with some traction. That's number one. Number two is that it should be a scalable product or a scalable business, basically. Number three, in terms of going in the right manner to the investors, you must have your correct and efficient business plan and a pitch deck, valuation report, etc., so that you have your correct documents to actually go to the investors in the right manner, right? Otherwise, what will you send to them? How will you pitch to them? So I think these three, four things are the right manner to go to the investors.
That I agree with. I totally agree with, because without evaluating yourself, if you go to an investor, they will obviously ask you those questions you don't know the answer of, and then you will obviously fail to get an investor.
That would
Okay,
be a
Yes,
disaster
yes.
then.
I totally
Yeah,
agree with that. That
absolutely,
would be a
absolutely.
Yeah.
yeah, but
So, uh,
one
uh,
more thing, like there are some startups who do not need investment, right? Like कई startups होते हैं जिनके अंदर without investment it won't work. But there are some startups who don't need investment as far, right? They only need to do a bit of marketing. They only need a few, uh, help from the investors. A few things that investors can bring to the table. So, how do you figure out that, okay, my startup actually need money as an investment, or my startup needs some help in the marketing side, in the business side, or something? How do you figure that out?
I think, see, if you create a good, and this is not I'm saying because we provide this service, but if you create a proper business plan, you will come to know where exactly your shortage is, where exactly your loopholes are. Do you actually require the funds or no? So when we are working on the business plan with a startup, right? On the last day, it's a 6 to 8 days program. On the
hmm,
last day, we come to know what is the cash flow deficit that we require to raise from the investors in our cash flow statement, the way we have built it. Okay. Now, in that particular thing, that investor will come to know if the whole cash flow is positive, he does not need cash. Then he needs where he needs to focus on what are his weaknesses. And then he can get some investor as a mentor on board, or maybe say for example, finance is weak, then he needs a virtual CFO or a
hmm,
CFO level kind, or a virtual CFO just to save cost initially, who will charge less and who will not be a full-time employee. If he needs a marketing person, you can get a good marketing mentor who is an investor also, but you want him as a mentor. So you can give him like, 1%, 0.5%, like an advisory equity, and get him on board or something like that, where he is also actively interested in your business, basically. So I think those kind of things can work.
That's actually,
Yeah.
that makes things very clear for me as well. Because if we want to start a startup in the near future, we need to know all these kind of things. And since we have you
Yeah,
with
yeah,
us right now,
absolutely,
we can actually
absolutely.
know this.
No, no, absolutely. Because see, it becomes difficult for if so I always say that as a startup, if you are a founder with say one skill, you should always have a co-founder with a complementary skill. Okay. So you can't have founders both having the similar skills. If both are coders, then who will do the operations, marketing, finance, and sales?
Agree.
Right?
right.
And if both are into marketing, then who will code, who will develop the product, who will do the finance? So you need to have founders who are in different skill sets. And where you cannot get a founder, you can always get an advisor, right?
Right.
Who can work with you guys and who can help you, who will not be a full-time employee, but he can always give you timely inputs which will really open the gates up for you basically at that moment.
Do you also provide this
Where
service?
so I mentor startups. We also do virtual CFO services for startups. That is also something that we do. So yes, we do provide those kind of services.
All right. Okay, so people who are
Nice.
listening to us, do check them out, Lakhani Finance Services. They are actually helping people out in a very early stage, and you should actually look them up because they can help you out. Definitely.
Right. Yeah. So going forward, like there's a thing that people say that investment after a point becomes a necessity for a company. Like they need to get funding out of somewhere for growing further, right? So is that true, first of all? And second, like, are there some indications?
There's a yes and no both to the answer. It completely depends on the business model that you're doing. A business model like Zerodha, Zoho, these guys have never required funding because they've always focused on profit from day one. So when you start a business, you must have a focus, whether your focus is to build a company profitably or your
Mhm.
focus is to build a company, without earning any profits. So if you're going to go on the former one, then you'll always focus on profitability and fundraising. You might need, I'm not saying you will not need, but you will never be in a desperate situation. Okay. And the other end, you'll always require funding and you'll always be desperate if you don't focus on profitability. So you need to decide as a founder, okay, where does your strength lie? Whether it lies on creating a profitable company from day one, is your mindset to earn profit, or is your mindset to just build the product and to scale it at any cost? Whether profit comes or not is a secondary thing. And agar profit nahi aayega, to I will raise funds from the investor. So when this, like if you read about Nitin Kamath, Zerodha or someone, so these guys focus on profitability from day one. No matter what, they are going to focus on profitability. So if you value them today as per normal standards, they are also a unicorn.
Right.
खाली fundraise हुआ नहीं है, but otherwise they are a unicorn in the rightful sense, right?
Right.
So I think it completely depends on your business model, basically. अगर
Great.
funds मिल जाते हैं बाहर से, तो of course it can speed fast your growth. But there is always pros and cons to both of them. And just the way to identify it is you need to understand your strength and weakness. What do you want to do as a founder?
Like I believe that there should be a balance in both the things, like creating the product and getting the profit. Because if there is not enough balance, you will lose one
Yeah.
part or the other, and it will take a toll on you later on. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So understanding that takes a lot of time, and it is way easier with people like you who can mentor people like us who are just starting. And we are so glad that you came to us, because with you we are able to provide our viewers that a platform where they can actually go and ask for help, ask for guidance. Like, we are very glad to have you on our platform.
Right.
Thank you.
Exactly.
So
Thanks a lot,
before
Bhavna.
we end, I would like to ask just one more question. That, do you have any question? Like, we always ask our guests to ask us a question, one question, anything that you have in your mind for us.
Okay, I have to ask a question.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. So my question would be, uh, so I have probably two questions, two parts to it. First is like, what are you guys planning to start up, and what is the why behind it?
Okay. So I'll go first. So we have not planned yet if we want to start a startup right now, because even now I am working in a startup. I'm learning a lot of things from the startup itself. And at this stage, I want to focus on learning for the next 4 5 years. Then I might think about starting a startup.
Okay.
Okay. And if we do start a startup, the why behind it would be that we are truly interested in that technology. And in, like, if let's say we are creating a gaming startup, we are creating games, then I want to be someone who is so much interested in the games. Like, I do not play games as much, but he does. So one of us has to be so much interested in the game or the art section of the game, right? So we can actually put in the maximum effort in creating that whole thing, right? So we won't back down when the bad time comes. So that's, I think, would be my why in the coming future. Can't
Okay.
say what now.
Wonderful.
Like, exactly.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
And for me, like Abhas said, currently we are in a learning phase, that we are learning about how a startup works, and what are the difficulties that comes with it, right? So that's why that was one of the motives to start this podcast, right? And we have like in a 5 to 7 year time span, we'll try something out. As I think in that time span, we'll gain the knowledge that we require to start something new,
Correct.
right? And when we started, the why is like, as Abbas said, my answer would be the same. Like, we have to love that thing that we are doing, right? If I love gaming, if I love something else, if I love music, me and Abbas love music so much. We are
Yeah.
both guitarists and singers too, instead of
Wow.
software engineers, right? So if we start something about music, then that would be something connected with our passion,
Mhm.
right? So that would be a great head start, or
Great
push for
motivation
us.
for us.
Yeah, motivation for us, exactly.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, that
And
sounds that is wonderful.
especially now we have you. We know we won't be needing too much mentorship. We don't have to search too much. We already have Devansh
100%.
on our side.
100%. 100%. Whenever you need.
Yeah. So everyone who is listening to us, please check out Devansh company, Lakhani Finance Services. They actually provide really great guidance. And Devansh, thank you very much for coming on our podcast. We are really glad to have you on our podcast.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thanks a lot, guys, for calling me on this podcast. And it was wonderful chatting with you guys. I had a lot of
Likewise.
fun and some interesting questions. So it was great to chat with you guys and to see that so many youngsters like yourselves in our country are trying to learn and build something, and doing this content creation also is wonderful. I would also want to start a podcast channel one day, but absolutely not getting the time right now. But hopefully one day I do start that, and be able to conduct it like how you guys are conducting in such a wonderful manner. So
Yeah.
thank you,
Thank you
thank
so
you
much.
guys, thanks
You are
for
always
calling me.
welcome on our podcast anytime you want.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%, 100%,
Yeah.
100%. Great.
Okay. Thank
Thank
you very
you
much,
so
Devansh.
much.
In today's episode, we learned a lot, and the wisdom we got from Devansh was very helpful. We hope you will learn how the investment process works and how you can mold your own mind and your whole process to get the investment and funding. So that's it for the today's episode of RoboSapien podcast. We hope you found this discussion helpful and informative. Thank you everyone for tuning in with us. We really hope you have liked it. And please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to RoboSapien channel's episodes so we can keep creating and keep get better every day. Until then, keep learning and stay curious.